Everyone, thank you so much for being here. I am fortunate to be able to have with me for this evening an opportunity to connect with a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, gosh, for probably over, definitely over 25 years, and
Yeah.
and who is so amazing as a person, and and just proves it with her release for her new book, Sisters in Arms, okay? And this is Sisters in Arms, a novel of the darling Black women who served during World War II. Is Kaia Alderson. Kaia, so glad for you to be here and
Thanks
to
for
be able to.
having me.
No, this is great. This is so good. I was, especially looking at how much our communities are best served when people realize all of the sacrifices of those who came before us. And especially many times when people are reflecting on our country's history, and we're looking through, the lens of civil rights, or we look through the lens of the great wars, World War I, World War II. And, so oftentimes, while traditionally we look at these major events, so oftentimes we're wondering, where were we during that period? Where were our ancestors during that period? And really taking time not only to do the research, but many times even just being able to speak to our elders who may have gone through it. And so I really think that this is poignant for us to really, delve deep into this book. But I think it's probably best first to start from for your perspective. Where is it that you found the inspiration to pen this book, Sisters in Arms?
It all started with the picture I saw on Twitter.
Oh,
If you can see that right
yeah,
here,
that's good. Like, hold that. That's
right
okay. I see.
there.
Uh-huh.
I've always been a little bit of a history geek, World War II geek, and I saw this picture, and I knew there were Black soldiers. I knew there were female soldiers. It was the first time I saw Black women in uniform, and I knew that was Europe, and I knew that was World War II. So I was like, who are they? What's going on here, and what's their story? And so I very quickly went and Googled Black women, World War II, Europe, and found out about the only all Black, all female unit to go overseas during the war, which was the 688. And their job was to help boost morale by getting the mail delivery going again in the last months of the war.
So, and especially, I guess this is a time when, not only are these these communities where our soldiers are there, you have it where, depending upon where the war has been brought, the scenes of action through which, you are not having it where soldiers are able to get their mail, they're not able to get rations or supplies. Sometimes, those supplies routes, we're talking about an area that, oftentimes are affected by war. And so for them to be there, it's a pretty integral service for them to be able to connect to the outside world, outside of the theater of war. But at the same time, of what, imagine, like, what would it do even for our African-American GIs over fighting the war, and then being able to see that right alongside them in service are women from their community. I mean, it's got to
Well,
be.
you would have thought it was like New Year's Eve or Mardi Gras from the descriptions I've seen when they arrived, especially because at first they were in England and then later they were in France. And they said when they arrived in France, where they were staying in Rouen, there was just, as soon as the word got out that there were sisters in Europe, it was just like a throng of men, hey, Susie, remember me from Bible camp or something like that. So it was a big deal for them that for the Black male soldiers that these women were even there.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, where I know for what type of research did you have to do in order to really write the story? Because it's one thing to be able to, we've all been able to, one time or another, be able to look at that picture that either sits on our family's mantles, seeing grandmama's picture, or even going into museums and be able to really find the story there and recounting that story, being able to add value and validate their experiences. How were you able to do that in a way that at least provides your characters with the depth as well as just telling a very true story, but doing so in a way where you really are getting the nectar of what their lives were like back then.
I was actually surprised how easy it was. It was almost like they were hidden in plain sight. Again, doing the basics, once I knew the name of the unit, I would type that in, and immediately you get the book, To Serve My Country, to Serve My Race, by Dr. Brenda L. Moore, which it's more of an academic book, but it's a very easy read. And where in the 80s and 90s, she was going to their reunions when they still had them, was interviewing them. So even in that book alone, I was able to get where they came from, what they were doing before the war, why they enlisted, what their parents did, what growing up was like, just different things, or even how long they were in the service. I had the list. There's a list of the 855 known women in the unit. So in terms of picking character names, I was able to make sure I was picking names that are appropriate to the time period. Their commanding officer, Major Charity Adams Early, published her memoirs before she passed. And so she basically walked us through the story, because she was in that very first officer training class, the very first training class I had in the Women's Army Corps. So I was able to see what it was like as a Black woman going into that situation from civilian life, having never even thought about joining the Army before, and the different experiences they had. Because yes, as rare as it was to me, it was very rare in real time to see a Black woman in uniform and to have officer stripes, and people would react to that given on what part of the country you're in or just what type of situation you're in. So I also was able to go to Iowa, to Fort Des Moines, where they trained. There's a museum there that was closed even before COVID. So I was able to go, we were able to get special permission to go in there. Wow. And that was even interesting because half of that museum is dedicated to the Women's Army Corps, because that's where they trained in World War II. But it was news to me to find out that in World War I, it was the site of where the Black officers trained for the medical corps for the Army in World War I. And I was like, oh, okay, who knew? And then later on that was in 2019, I was able to go to New York. So I was able to kind of scout out the areas that I was talking about in the book, the train lines they were riding in. And then I was able to go upstate to where the Camp Shanks is, which is where everybody shipped out of when they went overseas for that anniversary. And that historian there was so amazing. She was able to pull out the actual newspapers printed from 70 something years ago, from the time period that they would have been stationed there waiting to ship out. So I was able to find out, the pie shop had just opened. I knew the bus schedules, the train schedules between there and the city, what type of entertainment was coming in and out of the area. I knew that, an officers club had just opened up in the Hotel Teresa in Harlem. And of course I'd been to Harlem the day before, and I was like, I wish I had known, because I could have, gotten more details. I've always seen like the hotel from afar. I've never been outside. Oh, what's it like to walk in there? Things like that. So it was pretty cool. I didn't get a chance to go to England, but I did. I just put it out there. I'm looking for a unicorn. I'm looking for a Black woman who's as big of a World War II historical geek as me, who's been to England. And I found one who not only had done all those things, was married to a Brit, had lived in Birmingham, all that. So in terms of like what it was like to walk the streets of the city, when does the sun come up? When does it go down? How cold does it get? What the buildings were like, she was able to kind of, fact check me on these little things to make it more realistic. Because I wrote it with, in case somebody from England ever read this book, I want to make sure I get it right. Not knowing later that the rights to the UK would sell, and it's on the shelves in England right now.
And this is selling in England now.
Yep. This is the UK book cover.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. Versus the US cover.
Yeah.
Or the North American cover.
Oh man.
Who knew, right?
I know. Well, and I like how at least you're taking that time and even in developing the character to make it not only relevant to history, but also, there's a deeper meaning in there in terms of these women being able to find their self in contrast to a society which has not fully appreciated who they are enough to even give them the respect that they're due. Mm-hmm. And what I'm actually curious, I know you and I know each other because, we're, glad we're proud graduates of historically Black colleges and universities. And you attended Spelman, which is, now I know you didn't mean to do this, but you are wearing your light blue now. Okay.
Yep, and white.
and white. Okay, the blue and white. So the pride is there. What I wanted to know from you, Kaia, is, particularly because, we were looking at, and right now, this is a time where parents are applying to colleges, and, many of them are wondering whether or not their child, or even those students themselves are wondering, outside of what parents want, whether or not those schools that are going to focus on those populations that have been historically marginalized, or are African American schools of higher learning, whether they're giving you a realistic sense of how the world is, as well as, is it preparing you to be able to deal with the times that we have now. I was wondering, from your perspective, how much of these women's characters, granted it is a historical fiction, but you're still placing this in the context of history that has already gone past. How much of yourself are you finding in these characters, and how much did your education at Spelman prepare you to be able to write about this?
Well, I'm a graduate of a historically Black women's college, writing about an all-Black, all-female unit within the greater world of everything. So in terms of that whole experience of like that first week on campus, when you're all getting to know each other, and you're wherever you came from, you might have been the exception, and now you're pushed to, you're now living under the roof with a whole bunch of strangers who everybody was the exception where they came from. So now you're unexceptionally exceptional. You get some of that vibe even from when they first connect on the train, getting used to, I'm used to having my own room, now I have to share with somebody, or even that first night when they are at Fort Des Moines and the lights go out and they're like, okay, where's everybody from? I'm from here, I'm from there, I'm from there. And what's really funny is the fact that I put that in my book, and then another Spelman alumna, Namima Forna, she wrote The Gilded Ones, which think Spelman meets the Dora Milaje training program in a fantasy setting. And it was almost like we had some of the same things going on where when they first get to where their training spot. So that informed a lot of it. And then just looking at it, shifting my lens, not necessarily making the war the central focus, but my, the everyday life of a Black woman within this world, and how, she's basically living her life, and then, a racism happens. And it's like, okay, did that just happen? And how do I respond to it? Which I found also, I wish I had known these stories when I was younger, first coming out of college and going into the workplace, because what they're experiencing is nothing, or what I experience is nothing new based on what I'm reading from them. And it's like, I wish I had known this is how they dealt with it when they had even less space to express themselves. Like, spoiler warning, but it's not really spoiling anything.
They're commanding people aware. Okay.
Oh, no, because it's historical fact. It's out there.
Right, cool.
The commanding officer, when they were in England, had a general order her to do something that wasn't right, and he threatened to replace her with the white lieutenant, his words, and she told him, "Over my dead body, sir," and got away with it.
Wow.
You wouldn't think that happened. I didn't make that up. That happened in real life. And it's like, we need to know about that, because a lot of times when you get stories of our history and the things we've been going through, you get the history where the foot was on our necks, that we were bowing down, that we were yes sirring and no sirring and things like that. And it's almost like in that the special that we just had on Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till, where they the one things I really appreciate about Glenn Turman's performance is where he showed, when he was in Chicago, he acted one way. Then when he was back in Mississippi, he acted another way in public spaces. And you could see when it was a conscious choice that, for my survival, I need to act this way. But in reality, this is who I am. And so I wanted to show that, where, we always talk about like the bus boycott in Montgomery, and, they treated them so bad on the bus. But to show, okay, Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks had their place, but the success of that movement was, the maids, the nannies, the domestic workers, and the janitors and things. And in doing my little research of that, and just showing the shift of going from, always having to deal with this humiliation to being of a place of power, and how it transformed that community and ultimately the world. And so I'm showing that within this space of Black women in the military in the 1940s, where when you start adding in those other extra details, you're like, ooh, that must have been bad. And that must have been soul breaking, but because they had each other, and they might not have always liked each other. And again, back to the Spelman experience, when you're out in the world and something happens, sometimes the person who comes to help you is your sister. It might not be your favorite sister, but she has your back nonetheless, because it's bigger than that.
As I wholeheartedly agree, that's definitely true for the brothers of Morehouse, and not only just Morehouse. I mean, yeah, we know from our friends through Clark Atlanta, from Morris Brown. It's the sense that I'm going through what you're going through, and even though we may come from different backgrounds, when it's here in front of our face, the realities is that we have a shared level of survival. And through that survival, that story in itself to come about, like that's where our definition of ourselves lies in that, and we can really harness it. So I wanted to know, particularly now we've seen, I know for many of watching the news and they're hearing these headlines, they hear critical race theory, and I can tell them, hey, listen, at the Capitol, we realize that in this state, that they don't have any examples of where it's actually happening in local schools, because it's not. This was something that this is a lens that law schools use in order to study a law curriculum, and it's been so overblown. Like I said, they literally have absolutely zero public schools in Georgia that are teaching this, but those who are there are those who are focusing on obscene materials and literature, and the question is always not what is deemed obscene, but who is the one deeming that. And I know I've always been very much an advocate for our local schools, our parents and teachers organizations have always been there. But what do you tell parents who see this book and realize there's an opportunity where my students are not very familiar of African Americans, or particularly even women, being so active in the defense of the United States from this foreign enemy by providing a very necessary service there? What do you say to them when if they have fears that there may be topics that these women must discuss, or situations that they may have to face through which they develop a better sense of their character? What do you say to the parents who say, I'm not sure that my kids are ready for that type of material? How can we have a very safe space through which they can learn? Are they needing to fear what is being taught through this? How do you respond? Because I know there's some people who really feel that, yes, we need to be able to control the narrative that shapes how our children are learning. And I'm ready to hear from you.
Go ahead. Everything in that book is based on fact, even though it follows fictional characters. For the most part, if it happened in that book, it happened to somebody in real life. I'm trying to think. One of the facts of the 688 story is that while they were in Europe, some of their three of their troops there, they were killed in France. There's 4 women buried in the American cemetery in Normandy. 3 of them are from the 688. I show what that moment is like. I think you should be able to handle it. I don't know if it matters or not. I wrote it a month after my mother died. It was like one of those ironies of life. All I had to do was laugh. I'm like, I guess I'm gonna take this and put it in, use it to write these scenes. There's only 2 curse words in the whole book. Okay. And I know some people have, 3 if you consider the D word, but it's within character.
The D word's in the Bible, so there you go.
Yeah. So it's within character. It's not, if it seems gratuitous, it's because that's the character being themselves and being extra. I put it in there because a lot of people like, oh, back then, big mama, grandma, they didn't talk like that. And in my life, my grandmother figures, I've only heard them curse once, and it was in specific moments. And given that this story takes place when they would have been in their 20s, and they girl talk just like we girl talk or guy talk, it happens. And within those moments, it makes sense. And it's to show the gravity of it. They don't curse, but when they do, it means something. So I wouldn't say, it's actually kind of fun if you read the book, if you know enough history yourself. There's Easter eggs of people. I almost feel like I went overboard with dropping in the real life people or the famous people. There's one Easter egg no one's figured out yet. If you're like a really big jazz geek and you know this one specific fact, you'll figure it out. Right. But so it's like that. It's a chance to see these names or these random people that you people mention, or you seeing them in action. Okay, you can see how they engaged Eleanor Roosevelt, how they engaged Mary McLeod Bethune. Thurgood Marshall makes an appearance. They interacted with these people within this world, and so it isn't just like, oh, I went. They went and they did these great mighty things. I kind of try to show them in everyday situations. So you can say they were regular people just like us. And like we were speaking before, oh, did I know Stacey Abrams when I was in school? I was like, no, but I knew her I knew of her because she was a senior when I was a freshman. And so I can see that, I've watched her career grow, and it's like, oh, she came from the same place I came from. Right. We're all capable of doing great things.
Thank you. I was just, and probably lastly, just very curious to know, what have you been able to share this book with those who have had the lived experience of going through this, at least, if not particularly within World War II, but those who are a little older, who've been able to relate to the characters and just to understand, how they receive it?
I almost said no, but I forgot. My grandmother's best friend is still alive. She's 106, 107 years old. Wow. And I got the loveliest letter, just about how fabulous it was and how much she enjoyed it and was going to recommend it to her book club and her friends.
106? Wow.
Yeah. It was like, she said, oh, I hope I live long enough to read your next one. I'm like, what do you say to that? I'm like, I hope so too. But that meant a lot, and the fact, my grandmother died when I was 8 years old, the ones that she was friends with, and she was like, your grandmother would have been so proud of you. And I'm just sitting there like, really? Because a part of it is an homage to that generation, and my love letter to those who aren't here. So to answer that question, in terms of that, she was a nurse, so she would have been in New York at the time. She didn't serve overseas because she was in an essential position. But I have not spoken to any of the veterans of the 6th AAA. I believe only 6 of them are still alive. I did meet Major Adams' son when I was researching it enough to say, hey, I'm writing this book. And then I forgot, I lost his email coming back, so I came home with the flu, and I wasn't in my right mind. But I have received letters and spoken to women who are veterans, where they said that it rang true to them, and it reminded them of their experiences. And so I felt good about that. I was like, if you guys said it was legit, then I'm good with it, because I am not a veteran. I was never in the military. I'm not from a military family. And my closest tie to this story actually is I found out 2 weeks before the book comes out that my grandfather's oldest sister was an officer in the WAC. Wow. She was not in that class that I talked about, but right. She was amongst these
That's
people.
Close enough. That's really close enough.
Yeah, but I didn't know her, so I was like, oh, okay, I guess this was her story too.
No, this is, oh wow, that's so good. I'm so ready to continue reading it. For those who, definitely this book, Sisters in Arms, and this is also available on Amazon, I'm sure, right? I went and got this.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So I got this from a local store. I know for those in Henry County, we have Books A Million, we have a Story on the Square, but certainly you can get it online. And I have to ask you, what are your social medias? How do people find you? Okay, what should they be looking for?
I'm most active on Twitter, and Instagram, I'm at Kaia, Kaia Writes, Rites. And then on Facebook, I'm either author Kaia Alderson or Kaia Alderson author. I always forget.
I'll find a way to put that.
But I'm rarely on there. So if you're looking to engage me, Twitter, and then on Instagram, you can see. Right now I'm doing this week in Sisters in Arms history, because a lot happened in February and in March, just in real time back then. And also you get to see my quarantine stress bakes from when I should be writing, but I'm stuck, and so I make stuff.
No, it's all right. Look, you
Mhm.
still stay active. And I
Mhm.
think this is not only is inspirational for those who want to know more about our history, but it's even more so the fact that you are a living, breathing writer. And yes, you can have a career writing. So I particularly
Mhm.
just thankful for you to have the time. I'm glad to have this book. Can't wait to read more of it. And I can't wait to see you. I got you, your husband, Diallo. I mean, y'all are my family. So it's good to see you.
Reunions next year.
Yeah, I know. I'm ready. I'm ready. Do you hear me? Like, I'm ready. So
Yeah.
guys, it's so good. Well, thank you for giving me your time, and thank you. And yes, if you're watching this now, do get the book. This is amazing, and yeah, it's $16.99. Okay, so all right. If you're in the U.S., if you're in Canada, $21. And it is well worth it, and
I was about to
available not
say,
only in the U.S.
in the UK, it's $9, I guess £9.99.
Yeah, because that pound is serious,
Mhm.
expensive. No, thank you so much for your time. God bless you. I love you.
Thank
You're the
you.
best.
All right, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.